Well, good morning. Lesson number 5, the sheet is on the table in the foyer. We'll be here this morning and also, Lord willing, on Wednesday night. Then we've got one lesson left out here for this quarter. The theme is prayer. This lesson is praying like the Psalmist. So I hope that you appreciate that going through this journey is really a journey in the Psalter, the book of Psalms. And it's going to say some things about that. A whole lot of the text that we'll be taking from this section are taken from the Psalms, and I hope that we will appreciate after this morning and Wednesday especially why the Psalter will help us in our praying. So that's lesson 5. It's on the table. Pick that up. Praying like the Psalmist. That's today and Lord willing on Wednesday. Good to be with you this morning. And this is our class period. And so questions are welcome, comments are also welcome and encouraged. We want to participate together in this as we look into the Word. We want to continue to focus our thoughts and our minds on this spiritual blessing, this great privilege we have because of the covenantal relationship we have with God through Christ. We have this blessing because of Christ. So we're thankful for prayer. Good for us to be together this morning. Let's pray before we enter into this study this morning. Brother Al, would you lead that prayer for us, please, sir? Amen. Thank you, Al. All right. Big question, but I want feedback here in the beginning. This is a question that could have been asked when we started this study on prayer. Thanks to Travis for going through Jesus' prayer, high priestly prayer in the Gospel of John, chapter 17. There's a lot of material there. But here's a question that I could have asked, probably should have asked, when we started this journey. And here it is. Why pray? I'm not setting y'all up, but I'm looking for feedback here. Why pray? What's your thought there? How would you answer that question, why pray? Yes, brother. Okay. Yeah. I love that. It's stressing the blessing and the privilege of communication. You know, there's this dialogue, this open communication. I get to pour out my heart to God. Jimmy, why pray?
The Bible tells us that God knows what we need, but we need to express that need to God. We need to recognize that need for God. And it builds a relationship with Him. The idea of pray without ceasing. That constant dependence upon God. It's an acknowledgement of it, and it's also obviously a supplication to Him for Him to help us.
Okay, good. Man, Jimmy's all over that relationship concept. Yes. Y'all are passing the test, by the way. Anybody else? Why pray? Lynn's getting closer to God, yes, which is dovetails with what Jimmy said. Ryan?
We're not perfect. We're lacking. Going to God in prayer, we can acknowledge that. We can show Him. We can be subservient to Him. We can humble ourselves before Him. We can request from Him. We can try to draw closer.
Right. Love that. Okay, Rick, last one. Love it. Love intimacy, love relationship, love because we're not perfect, love because of the communication that exists. What a blessing that is. We're speaking to a God who hears. We're speaking to a God who cares. We're speaking to a God who has the power to make good on what we're asking him to make good on according to his will and his time. Travis, you have something? Yes, yes. And that's the beauty. The book of Job helps with that. That's the beauty of the Psalter. Because in the Psalms, what we discover is emotion, raw emotion, the psalmist crying out. And at times, God, why? God, how long? God, why are you silent? I mean, it's a continual pouring out of the heart to God. I was asking someone this question about why I pray, and they said, well, because we need to talk to God. We need to communicate with God. And I said, okay, same question, now word a little bit different. Why do we need to communicate with God? And it's an indication of relationship, they said. It's the value in the relationship. Why would I not want to speak to God? And y'all have heard me illustrate this before in regards to relationship. 31 plus years, Amy and I have been married. And someone says, well, if I were to say to you, if a marriage counselor said to me, Paul, I'm kind of concerned here, you don't talk to Amy anymore. And if my response to the marriage counselor is, well, why do I need to talk to my wife? That marriage counselor was like, that's why you're here getting counseling. And that's fair. See, whenever there's a situation where there's not open communication in the relationship, something's wrong in the relationship. Now, we can speak about communication and say, well, I'm talking to her. I'm talking to her. Because several times a day, every day, I open my mouth and ask her to do things for me. And the marriage counselor's like, okay, that's a start. We've got to grow that a bit. Because if the only time you speak, if the only time you desire the communication, and the only reason you get close to your wife is because you want something from your wife. Y'all see where this is going. Y'all know this. The Psalms help us. I love some of the things I've been reading over the last several months. I want to share a couple with you. One writer says this: prayer is the fuel that provides the spiritual spark for our lives. And I know that's a very simplistic, that's a catchy, okay, what do you mean by that? But I just want you to turn that over in your mind. Prayer is the fuel that provides the spiritual spark for our lives. Martin Lloyd-Jones says this. I love this. Man is at his greatest and highest when upon his knees he comes face to face with God. If you read into that simply a prayer posture, you're missing the point. Face to face with God, intimacy with God, drawing near to God. You see, Travis said with Job didn't ever get really an answer to his why questions. He had his day with God in court. And when he got his day with God in court, he repented. He's like, oh, I get it now. I get it now. If we are, as Jimmy said, dependent upon God, and we are, everybody agrees, and we can't navigate our way from earth to heaven without the blessing and the favor of God. And even though we don't understand ultimately everything about how God chooses to work in this world, when he does what he does, why he allows what he allows, God is sovereign. He doesn't have to ask my permission. But I will not be able to navigate my way from earth to heaven without God. And my speaking to God daily in prayer is one way that I can get closer to God. It's a for rest of the life, or for rest of my life kind of deal. Trying to get close to God. So why is it, and I'm not looking for a response to this question, I just want you to turn it on your mind, and I'm not trying to be accusatory or go after anybody else. I'm in this, we're all in this together. But why is it when we have studies about prayer and we have groups that spend 10 to 11 months on praying once a month, why is it that we acknowledge freely and in agreement that prayer is the greatest, perhaps, blessing we have in Christ and an absolute necessity? Why is it that we can acknowledge all these things and see all these things and still be negligent in our praying? So, I think, at least for me, studying the Psalter, looking at the Psalms will help us in prayer. How is that the case? I think we will always struggle in prayer until we understand the value of the Scriptures. Now again, I'm not saying you've got a prayer box, check it, and then you've got to study the Bible box, check it. Here's all I'm saying when I connect the two. How is it that I can speak to a God that I don't really know? How is it that I can understand the blessing and the privilege of something if I don't understand what's being revealed to me about that something and about the one who I'm speaking to? Getting in the Scriptures, understanding God's revelation to us when God has revealed His mind, getting into the Word will help us in our praying. Maybe one of the reasons that Christians don't pray is because it's the symptom of a bigger problem. And generally, if I am aware of some deficiency, some spiritual deficiency in myself or in someone else where, listen, they don't spend hardly any time in the Word except, when they get together on a Sunday and the teacher is teaching and the preacher is preaching and maybe they'll follow along. But other than that, this stays closed the rest of the week. And then every once in a while when the preacher will do what I'm doing right now or the teacher will say what I'm saying right now, they kind of manipulate and guilt trip people into study. Okay, I hadn't studied the Bible. Wow, you make me feel like a loser. I don't love God like I should and I don't appreciate God like I should. So I'm going to get into His Word. That moved me back to a check the box kind of thing. When Amy and I were dating, now we were in the same town. So blessing there in the same town. It was a 10-minute drive, and I could see her. But a lot of you, when you were dating, a lot of you couldn't drive 10 minutes. A lot of you had to drive several hours to see the person that you said that you love, that you're dating or you're engaged to. All the way back in my father's generation, let's even go back to my grandfather's generation. Boy, are we going back. I went down back into granddad's generation. When you were at war, when you were across the ocean, and snail mail and a letter was written to you, if you were getting a letter from your bride, if you were getting a letter from the woman that you were in love with, and when you got sent back home, y'all were going to get married, if you got a letter from her, would anybody have to ask you to open it up and read it? Now, take it to the next level. How many times would you read it a day? See, it was a love letter. And I'm not wanting you to think solely in terms of this is a love letter. Law and love combining, we sing in a song, don't we? Give me the Bible. Give me the Bible. Law and love combining. That's what it is. And so when we get into this, it's going to help us into our praying. So studying the Psalter, a better knowledge of God, and being honest with ourselves and honest with God. Okay, go to Psalm 139. Psalm 139. The lesson that I gave you, lesson 5, intentionally so, is not laced and loaded with questions. There's about 6 points. We'll work through these not like a lesson, but I want you to see something in Psalm 139. I want you to see in Psalm 139 some things. I'm just going to read, and I know it's somewhat lengthy. I won't read all of Psalm 139, But I want you to listen here. So this is in the Psalter. If you're hearing this read, if you're reading this, pick up on language. A Psalm of David, Psalm 139 from the New King James Version. O Lord, you have searched me. You know me. Lord, you know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all of my ways. There is not a word on my tongue, and behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You have hedged me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge, verse 6, is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell or Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the light shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. God, you formed. You formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. And your eyes saw my substance being unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when as of yet they were none of them. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more in number than the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. How is this going to help us? Here's a psalm. And there are others that are laid out in similar fashion. I chose this one because there are three things in this psalm of David that he's declaring to us about God that helped strengthen the intimacy that he had with God. That, yes, we'll see other psalms that influenced him in his drawing near to God as he would speak to God, as he would cry out, as he would petition his God in prayer. The first 6 verses speak about God being omniscient. God being all-knowing. I've highlighted in my Bible, you know, verse 2. You understand, verse 2. You comprehend, verse 3. You are acquainted, verse 3. You know it all together, verse 4. God is omniscient. He knows everything. He knows everything. There are times that we don't speak what we know, even though we know God already knows it, and we'll deal with that as to why sometimes we don't speak things to God knowing that He already knows it, but God knows everything. He's intimately acquainted. Now, Amy is acquainted, and in some sense you could say she's intimately acquainted with me. She doesn't know what God knows. But it's not that just that God is omniscient. He's omnipresent. He's everywhere. Verses 7 through 12. How do I get away from you, God? How can I flee from your spirit? How can I flee from your presence? Verse 8, you are there. You are there, verse 8. Even there, verse 10, you are there. God is everywhere. And then he's omnipotent, verses 3 through 18. He knows everything. He is aware of everything. He's present all the time, everywhere. His power is always sufficient. Always capable of doing just what God wants to be done. And then in this same psalm, where David is saying these 3 basic things about God, getting to know God better will help strengthen our time as we draw near Him. And we won't see it as a box to check. We won't see it as I got to take care of this, or relegated to prayer time, or relegated to, oh no, I need from the Lord time. Understanding these things about God. And then David says this. I love this because these are generally two cherry-picked passages that preachers pull from the Psalter, but they're important. Look at verses 23 and 24, how he ends Psalm 139. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. What would it do for us if we just prayed Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24? What would that do for us? If today we were just in faith, from pure motives, y'all know those are variables that are important, in faith, pure motives. What if we just prayed Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24 today? What would it do for us? I'm not looking for you to bare your soul. What would it do for us? Lynn? Amen. Good. Absolutely, Ryan.
It's going to help me appreciate this writer's thoughts. I can make connections, but I need to offer my own personal prayer before God as well. This is an example, this is a model, just like I was doing in the Bible. It's definitely something I can learn from. But as far as my own personal, what it does for me, it sets a bar, it sets a standard.
Okay.
But I still need to go to God on my own.
Okay. Agree. Agree. Anybody else? Debbie? Yes, yes, yes. Search me. Honesty? If my motives are pure, and I believe for the most part in this room they are pure. God, I want you with the eye to, I want you to search. I want you to look and see in me what has no place in me, and reveal that to me. I want you to test me. You know, the honesty here, the integrity here, the willingness to say, I mean, you don't do these kinds of, now remember, pure motives. You don't do this kind of speaking unless you are very comfortable. You feel secure. Because when God, you reveal it to me, He doesn't say how He's going to do. But God, when you make it known to me and you reveal it to me, I've asked you to do it. And when you do it, I feel confident that this is something that I need to pay attention to. There's a lot going on. Okay, Travis, was it you? I'm going to work back this way.
God doesn't need our permission to search. He knows.
Mm-hmm. Yes. 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 Yeah. I'm inviting him into, like Travis said, we don't need to give him permission. He's going to do what he wants to do. It's his sovereign right and will. There are things God's going to do. That's what he wants to do. But the invitation is there. The intimacy is there. The invitation is extended because the intimacy exists. All right. Somebody over here. Jimmy? Yes, absolutely. Rick?
I would say not only pray this, but live with this in the center of your mind to where it's a part of your being.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. Go with me, Psalm 37. One more, and then we'll move into some of our discussion points. Psalm 37. Psalm 37. Just going to read a section. And again, this is a profitable study. If you go through the Psalms, you can 150, so it'll take you a while unless you're the overachiever that's going to do 150 in one day. But it's hard to do the 150 in one day and get what you need to get out of it. It's kind of like start now and go the rest of the year, just reading through the Psalter. And as you're reading through the Psalter, this time what you're doing is, it's a wonderful blessing to read through the Psalter. And every time you see something revealed to us about God, His nature, His attributes, His character, man, just jot that down. That's a great journey. But here's a journey as you're going through the Psalter is just see the honesty, to see the prayers that are mentioned and the emotions and the feeling and the intimacy and what's going on. But here in Psalm 37, do not fret. Somebody have a translation, you got a word other than fret? I don't think every translation has fret. Fret, do not fret. What is fret? Worry. Okay, good. Because of evildoers, nor be envious because of the workers of iniquity. All right. Worry and envy. Anybody ever struggle with worry and envy because of this messed up world we live in? Okay, sorry. Maybe that was a confession time for me. All right, verse 2. For they shall soon be cut down like grass and wither as the green herb. So rather than worry, rather than being envious, it's not fair, Lord. Lord, it's not fair. God, you're missing something here. God, you could have done it better over here. Your timing is off, Lord. And we would never say it that way, but yet sometimes that's the thoughts going on in the Psalter. But rather than fret and rather than be envious, here's what we know about God who is sovereign and He's on His throne. And so what He says is, verse 3, trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on His faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and He will give you the desire of your heart. Man, I love verse 4. Anybody else like verse 4? Really? Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's a gimme. Gimme. the delight, the things I delight in, the desires of my heart. Like a bigger house and another car and a condominium over here for a vacation spot, a membership at the country club. Y'all are saying, that's a perversion. And it is a perversion. What is really the desire of my heart? Or who is the desire of my heart? All right. Commit your way to the Lord, verse 5. Trust also in Him. He shall bring it to pass. He will bring forth your righteousness as a light and your justice as the noonday. Rest in the Lord. Wait patiently for Him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. Cease from anger. Forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only causes harm. The first 8 verses. Man, if we just read that for the rest of this week every day, that's going to put us in a good place to resist the devil. But why is that putting us in a good place to resist the devil? Because reading this, acknowledging this, understanding this, and praying this is part of surrendering and submission to God. And in this psalm, what he's saying is, all right, here's the antidote. Here's some healing. Here's some help for the anxiety and the fretfulness and the envy that we have because we live in such a messed up world, a fallen world, where people are anti-God and the purposes of God. And so what he's saying is, here's what you need to be doing. You need to trust in the Lord. You need to delight in the Lord. You need to commit your way to the Lord. You need to rest in the Lord. Now, that's 4, not 3. Technically, 2 of them are connected together. But what he's saying is trust in the Lord, delight yourself in the Lord, commit your way to the Lord, and rest in the Lord. Studying the Psalter, digging into this text, seeing what we need to see about God, and then seeing what we need to see about ourselves. Acknowledging what we need to acknowledge about God, understanding what we need to understand about God, and then admitting about ourselves and understanding ourselves as God sees us is going to help shape us in our praying. We're just trying to draw close to God. So I'm starting the day, and we'll deal with this kind of the when. Again, not a box to check about the when, like morning, noon, and evening. Did you remember to pray? What's wrong with you? Have you not prayed at least 3 times a day? That's not my point. I start my day with prayer. It's not my place to tell you why unless you ask me privately, and I'm happy to share that with you. But I start my day with prayer. I'm not saying to you if you don't start your day with prayer that what is going on with you, because I know a lot of you end your day with prayer. But sometimes when you end your day with prayer, have you ever had your head on the pillow at night and you didn't finish your prayer? Now, I'm not saying, okay, see, then that God gave up on you. You didn't finish it, so he doesn't know. But here, what we have here is me drawing near to God. The intimacy, the blessing. I have a God who cares. I have a God who is on his throne. I have a God of power. I have a God who is present. A God who wants to hear from me. A God who is ever aware of all that I'm going on before I even share that with him. But I want to share it with him. I want to talk to him because of who he is, because of where I am in life. And one of the things he says is, you know, just going to God will strengthen your trust. You're confident. And because of the confidence that you have, because of the faith that you have, that when you speak to God, you know God hears and answers the prayers of his people. That heaven isn't silent. God will do what he wants to do when he wants to do it. But he hears. He cares. He understands. He has the power connected to his care. And so he just tells me, Paul, here's what you do. When you speak to me and you cast your care upon me, you turn it over to me because of the trust that you have in me, then today do good. And as you're doing good today, because you started your day this way, and as you do good today, here's what you feed on. Feed on faithfulness. Feed on faithfulness. Yesterday, I fed myself at least 3 times. I don't feel guilty about that one bit. And that's good for my body. Well, for the most part. What do I feed on every day? See, the Psalter here is telling me, when you're dealing with worry, and you just got a case of envy working against you. Because you know Monday I'm going to work Monday. And I know good and well Monday I'm going to go in and I'm going to be surrounded by people. And I'm going to have to see this guy 8 o'clock in the morning. And I know this guy is a scoundrel. I know this guy has no integrity. I know this guy tells lies. I know this guy cheats. I know this guy is not a God-fearing man. And almost everything that happens to him turns out for his benefit. He gets the promotions. He gets the pay raises. It's not fair. Oh, wait a minute. I already talked to God about that an hour ago on the way to work. And so what I'm doing is I'm being reminded of that intimacy, that closeness that I had with the Father, what I just spoke to him. I just gave him some praise and thanks today. And I remember when I was reading the Psalter that somebody else felt the way I feel. Somebody else was going through what I'm going through. And what the Lord said to them was, you can trust me. You can trust me with it. And today, feed on faithfulness. One of the greatest blessings in this life that the Lord has given me is good friends, family, and a wife who's faithful. What a blessing that is. There's not one time that I question whether this woman is for me. She's for me. And that makes me want to stay close to her. But that pales in comparison to the faithfulness of God, because He's a God who has no limits. He's a God whose wisdom is far superior. He's a God who is good, and there's only one who's good, and that is God. And I can feed on His faithfulness. I can delight in Him. And He will give me the desires of my heart. Sometimes the Lord doesn't give because His people aren't asking. James says that, by the way. You have not because you do not ask. Now, sometimes we're not receiving from the Lord even though we're asking. I mean, it's like every day, hey, knocking, hey, come on, I'm wanting this. And James says, but you're not receiving it because you ask, was it the King James? You ask amiss. You ask from impure motives to consume it on your own pleasures. Your heart's not pure. You bring the right heart into a readiness to be in the presence of God, to just talk to God about God, and then give Him praise and thanksgiving, and then pour out your heart in supplication, in making requests. God, you know, and I'm asking this, and I trust that you will give me the desires of my heart. If it's in alignment with your will, I trust you will give it. Those are the things that will help us as we go into our praying. I'm going to read you 2 Psalms and then ask you a question. All right, so I want to bring in some participation now. I've done more lecturing than I intended to do, and then I will do on Wednesday. But I'm reading 2 Psalms, and I want you to see, is there a connection? Is there a contradiction in these 2 Psalms? I'm just going to give them to you. All right. Psalm 66 and verse 18. Psalm 66 and verse 18. Now, reading the Word, understanding the Word, walking through the Word is going to help us now in our praying. Psalm 66 and verse 18. If I regard iniquity in my heart, that is, if I'm cherishing sin, regarding iniquity in my heart, if I'm cherishing sin, the Lord will not hear my prayer. Now, Psalm 130, verses 1 through 4. Psalm 130, verses 1 through 4. Out of the depths, O Lord, I have cried to you. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive, Lord, to the voice of my supplications. Verse 3. Psalm 130. Psalm 130, verse 3, if you, Lord, should mark iniquities, that is, Lord, if you should keep a record of sins, oh Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, that you may be feared. You have one psalm saying, don't expect the Lord to hear. Don't expect the Lord to regard your prayers. Don't expect answers. And then you have another psalm that is begging and entreating for the Lord to hear, to the Lord to listen, to the Lord to be attentive. And then he mentions about the Lord, should you mark iniquities or keep a record of the sins, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you. Is there a contradiction in those 2 psalms? Is there a compliment in those 2 psalms? The reason I'm bringing these 2 up, I was in a meeting earlier this month, had morning services. And in the morning I was dealing with the life of Jesus, and one lesson of the 3 morning services was on prayer in the life of Jesus. And we hadn't really touched, in fact, I hadn't read either one of these Psalms. We weren't going through the Psalter. We were going through the life of Christ, and Jesus prayed, and learning some things about prayer as we looked at the life of Jesus. And there was, now this is a 10:30 in the morning crowd. So to be quite honest, most of the ones in the 10:30 crowd are those who are retired age. This lady came up to me and she said, Brother White, I'm glad you're talking about prayer, or at least talked about prayer. She said, I still, and I'm guessing, I would say early to mid-70s was her age. And she says, I still struggle with prayer. Can anybody else relate to that? Okay, good. Because if you're not saying yes, I would pray for you later today. She said, I see text of Scripture that the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous. His ears are open to their prayers. Who's the there? The righteous. Face of the Lord is against those that do what? Evil. And she says, I see a complement of passages. And she said, quite honestly, it intimidates me, was the word she used. Because she said, I know all too well my failures. Here's what I heard her revealing to me without her saying any more than that. I want to pray. I want it to be not a box that I check and not just a before I eat meals. I want to be intimate on this level. I want to draw near. I want to be close to. I want to pour out my heart to God. He's my shepherd. I'm sheep. And we understand something about sheep, why sheep would need a shepherd. She said, that's me. But, man, I had a thought about someone the other day. And this is not what she's saying. This is me interpreting. I had a thought about someone the other day that it's even someone I worship with. It's someone in the church where I'm a member. And I had a thought about them the other day, and I'm just angry. I'm just wrestling with anger towards them. I got a couple of emotions that are trying to come together that create the perfect storm. I said this. I didn't mean to. I was driving my car and somebody cut me off. It was just me in the car, but here came the word. I don't have to continue down that road. And I wonder how many Christians who wrestle with this moment where they're hearing a class on prayer, they're reading through the Psalms, they're seeing these things that I want, and I don't. And now the guilt is just intensifying. Am I making sense? So unless okay, I get on my knee, clearly, God, I've asked you to search me. I'm aware of something, a wicked way that is in me. And now when I'm being made aware of a wickedness that is in me in thought or action that has no place, and then I come and on my knees and I say, God, forgive me. And that's important. We should do that. I think, one man's opinion, I think one of the reasons we struggle in prayer, remember I started with the question, why pray? To take us on the journey of the blessing and the privilege, who God is, who we are, an acknowledgement of Him, an understanding of ourselves. I think, purely this one guy's view, that one of the reasons that Christians struggle in prayer is because we still struggle with grace. Noah did a great job this morning. Grace isn't cheap. Grace is not licensed to sin. Grace is not ignoring the character of God and the free gift of Jesus Christ. But if I struggle with grace, then I'm going to be that person that says, I don't deserve to talk to God today. I don't deserve for God to give me favor today because. And the psalmist said, oh, please, Lord, hear me. if you should mark my iniquities and keep a record of my sins, O Lord, who could stand? What is he saying there? If God should keep a record of all of my sins and mark my iniquities, who could stand? What is he saying there? Lord, if you should mark our iniquities, who could stand? Oh, yes. Okay. Great way to end. All right. Be looking at lesson 5. We'll deal with it more concerned about God's will, making same commitments, praying when they pray, trusting God. Go through this list of 6 and see if you can find some psalms that help us to understand some of these 6 points.